Carlos Rogers played in the NBA from 1994 to 2002, and he was selected with the 11th overall pick in the 1994 NBA draft by the Seattle SuperSonics. Standing at 6'11", Rogers was known primarily as a defensive-minded center and power forward. After his stint with the Warriors, he played for several teams, including the Raptors, the Portland Trail Blazers, and the Indiana Pacers. His most productive seasons came with the Raptors in the late 1990s, where he provided solid minutes as a backup big man. One of the more notable aspects of Rogers' story is that he played college basketball at Tennessee State, where he was one of the most dominant players in school history. He was named Ohio Valley Conference Player of the Year and established himself as one of the best players to come from a historically black college or university to make it into the NBA in the 1990s. Carlos Rogers was selected 11th overall in the 1994 NBA draft by the Seattle SuperSonics and then was immediately traded to the Golden State Warriors. During his time with the Warriors, Rogers served primarily as a backup center. The Warriors at that time had other frontcourt players like Clifford Rozier and Victor Alexander, which meant Rogers had to compete for minutes off the bench. His rookie season with Golden State was relatively modest in terms of playing time and production. Rogers appeared in games primarily as an energy player off the bench, where his role was to provide defense, rebounding, and shot blocking presence. While he showed flashes of athletic ability that made him a first-round pick, he didn't receive consistent playing time to develop a larger role. By the end of the 94-95 season, the Warriors decided to move in a different direction, and Rogers was traded, marking the end of a brief tenure with the team. His time with Golden State essentially served as the introduction to his NBA career, though he would go on to have more productive seasons with other teams later in his career. Carlos Rogers joined the Toronto Raptors during their inaugural season of 1995-96, making him one of the original players on the expansion team. This period from 95 to 1998 represented what was arguably his most stable and productive stretch of his NBA career. With the Raptors, Rogers found a more consistent role than he had with the Golden State Warriors. He served as a backup center behind players like Oliver Miller and later Marcus Camby. The Raptors, being a new team, provided more opportunities for playing time than he had received with the Warriors. During his Toronto tenure, Rogers became known for his energetic play off the bench. His primary contributions came on the defensive end. While the Raptors struggled overall as an expansion team during these years, Rogers provided valuable minutes as a rotation player. One of the notable aspects of Rogers' time in Toronto was his role in helping establish the culture of the new franchise. While not a starter or even a star player, he was part of an original core that helped build the foundation for what would eventually become one of the NBA's most stable franchises. By 1998, Rogers' time with the Raptors came to an end, but this period represented the height of his NBA career in terms of consistent playing time and his role. The Raptors' years showed that while he never developed into a star with his draft position, he could be a reliable contributor on an NBA team. Rogers joined the Portland Trail Blazers in 1997. The Trail Blazers during this period were a competitive team in the Western Conference, which meant Rogers had to find his role within an established roster. In Portland, Rogers continued his role as a backup big man behind players like Arvydas Sabonis and Rasheed Wallace. The Trailblazers had a deep roster during this period, which meant Rogers' playing time was somewhat limited compared to his stint with the Raptors. His contributions to the Trailblazers were similar to his previous roles, providing energy off the bench, defensive presence, and rebounding. The team made the playoffs during his time, though Rogers' role in the postseason was minimal. Rogers' time with Portland was relatively brief. Rogers joined the Houston Rockets in 1999, coming into a team that was in transition from their championship years of the mid-1990s. With the Rockets, Rogers again served in a backup role, though his playing time was more limited than in previous stops. He not only played behind Hakeem Olajuwon, but also other big men on the roster, which meant his minutes were somewhat sporadic. This period represented the latter part of Rogers' NBA career, and his role had diminished from his more productive years with teams like the Raptors. His contributions remained similar to his earlier years, providing defense and rebounding when called upon, though on a more limited basis. By 2001, Rogers' time with the Rockets came to an end, and this period essentially marked the wind down of his NBA career. While not a particularly memorable stretch statistically, it represented his ability to maintain a spot in the NBA as a backup big man, even as his playing time decreased. Rodgers joined the Indiana Pacers for what would turn out to be his final NBA season. This represented the last stop in his NBA career that would have spanned 8 years across multiple teams. With the Pacers, Rodgers' role was very limited. He served as a deep bench player behind established frontcourt players like Jermaine O'Neal and Jeff Foster. The 2001-2002 Pacers were a competitive team in the Eastern Conference, but Rodgers was essentially an insurance policy, a veteran big man who could be called upon if needed due to injuries or foul trouble. Rodgers was known for his shot blocking ability and his defensive presence in the paint. While he never developed into a major offensive threat, he carved out a role as a reliable rotation player who could provide energy and defense off the bench. After his NBA career ended in 2002, Rodgers had brief stints playing professionally overseas before retiring from basketball. His career, while not spectacular by NBA standards, represented a solid journey from an HBCU to an 8-year NBA career, which he appeared in hundreds of games and contributed into several teams. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys. And hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Stay safe.